Welcome to the Monday Monologue. Well, as you can see, I'm elbows deep into this ST70 new kit build, and this has been fun. Pretty sure this is going to make my new list of budget tube amps to buy. And what's cool about it is it comes with some budget parts if you're on a price point that you can later upgrade as you have the income or the extra money to do so. And so that's a really fun part of this kind of project. Plus, it's got really nice iron, which like those budget China amps don't. And previously I had said, hey, go buy like that, Risong A12 or the A50 and then do the mods to it. This is like next level. And it's, to me, similar to something like the R8 would be, but it's got better iron right out of the box. And there's a nice upgrade path of upgrading like the coupling caps and maybe the speaker jacks and, upgrading some other parts of it as you go along. So watch that series if you're interested, especially if you're a DIYer. Plus, it's just a fun project. And it comes ready to go. Chassis already fabbed up, so you don't have to do that part. It's a really cool vintage look, and there's like 10 zillion mods for these things. And so, yeah, I think this is going to be a really fun DIY kind of starting point for a lot of you guys. And for you folks that need like text instructions and you can't follow or don't want to follow a video, and your brain works with reading text instead of looking at pictures and watching a video, it comes with written instructions. And that's one of the reasons I'll never do a kit, because I honestly couldn't do this. I couldn't sit down and write this in a way that people would understand, and I know it would just be a total mess. And I've had people comment, email, hey, I'd love if you do a kit, but if you did, it's going to need written instructions because I can't follow a video. And yeah, I'm not going to do that. And the other reason is I haven't really sourced a reasonable place to get chassis fabricated, and to really get a good price point, you have to get hundreds of them done. And these folks already know they have a market for these things, and so they can go out and have a bunch of chassis fabbed up at once, which is how you get a good deal. So anyway, for me building a kit, not going to happen. Here's a good kit to buy. EML Kit makes nice kits too. Never built them myself. If one of you guys would like me to build one of those EML kits on the channel, I would be willing to do that on a commission basis. And send me an email. You can have it drop shipped here. We'll figure out what it would cost you to have me build it for you. And I'll go through just like I am this one, and possibly do some small mods to it in the way that Skookie thinks would make it a better amp. So this has been fun. So the other thing I want to talk to you guys about today is I've had a lot of people asking me over the years, where's a 300B amp? I want to buy a 300B amp. I don't want to build a DIY thing from scratch, and they wanted a kit. I'm not, like I said before, I'm not doing kits, but I would consider doing a built 300B amp. And I consider a 300B amp to be worthwhile needs to be at a higher level than like what I've built those EL34 amps that I've been selling. Like I did a 300B amp, a budget one, using like EdCore output transformers and stuff. And honestly, it sounded good, but it just wasn't what I would call world-class sounding until I put those ISO Tango output transformers on it. And then it really came to life when I put those EML tubes in it. And there's no way you can do an amp like that at a low price point. And there's already low price point 300B amps. The China manufacturers have taken care of that. There's the A50, there's the R300. I think MusicShare makes one, and I can't compete in that market segment. And so what I'm planning on doing is George Lentz at Tubes USA is looking at getting a custom, for me, my design power transformer that'll work with my DIY design that incorporates all of the transformer taps, and because I had to use like separate little filament transformers inside the amp and all that stuff, we're going to put all of them into one power transformer, and I'm going to use all ISO iron. We're going to use their output transformer, their power transformer, and their choke on this 300B amp. I'm also planning on using like the really nice built-in gold plated tube sockets. We're going to use like non-inductive cathode resistors. We're going to use audio note cathode bypass caps, use Nikon filter caps. Probably going to use a couple of Hammond chokes inside it because ISO doesn't make these little smaller chokes. It's going to be a dual rail power supply. It's going to have regulated 5-volt DC heaters so that no matter what voltage you plug it into, whether it's like 118 or whether it's 125, you're still going to have exactly 5 volts DC on the heater. There's not going to be any bias adjusting. There's really not going to be like hum pots, or it's not going to need any of that. It's just going to be you plug it in the wall and it works. I'm also going to run the tubes at a pretty modest level, and unlike my EL34 amps or some of these other amps that use cheaper tubes, I've learned that these direct heated triodes, especially a 300B, I don't think a 2A3 is the same way, but a 300B doesn't like being run at really high dissipation percentages. And I found, at least with my budget 300B build, which really isn't a budget anymore because I put all these nice parts on it, but anyway, it likes being run about 80%. And it's well within the guidelines of operating points that like EML and Western Electric and these other high-end 300B tube manufacturers recommend for long tube life. The other little trick I do is I wire the heaters a mirror of each other so that one tube has the DC going through it in one direction and the other tube has the DC going in it the other direction. So like every 6 months you can swap the tubes, and then the DC's going through the heater in the opposite direction, which extends the filament life so that you're using both ends of the filament, because that's another issue that can happen with these direct heated triodes. So you should be able to get thousands of hours of life out of these 300B tubes, and they're safe to use, and the main thing is there's no like bias to check or adjuster. It's very user friendly. And so working on coming up with that as a product, like I said, I'm not going to try to compete down in the budget price point because it's just a saturated market. And so I'm going to be doing it again with really nice ISO Tango iron, which I don't think anybody else is using this made in Japan really high-end iron like I'm going to be using at the price point that I'm going to be talking about. I'm also thinking about doing it with a wood chassis like I did some of those color preamps, and I did my KT120 mono blocks kind of at a different thing, but it's going to be more like those color preamps where it's got wood on all 4 sides, and then it's going to have an aluminum top plate that probably going to get it either anodized or powder coated so it really looks nice sitting in the wood. I mean, I know a lot of them are aluminum colored. I don't know if black powder coating might look better, or even silver powder coating that's got kind of a textured finish that'll keep it from needing to be kept polished or buffed or whatever. Anodizing might be a better solution. I haven't decided on that yet, but definitely going to have, like a thick aluminum top with wood sides that looks similar to this, but it's obviously going to be a larger size, and we're going to have the IC connector into the back, into the wood part, and then also have the speaker jacks into that part. Now, I would prefer putting the input jacks up on the top plate, kind of on the side of the top plate, like not in the front, but like in the side here, where I keep the input signal away from the DC and other things that could end up injecting noise into the circuit. I know some people like the RCA jacks like all hidden in the back. So I haven't decided on that yet. I mean, I could do that. It's not my preference, but the way I lay out my amps, I could put them kind of in the back corner away from the power jack that's going to be on the other side. And so let me know in the comments what you think about having the input jacks like on the top versus having them in the back. It would be more difficult to put them in the back. I'll have to make some kind of like cutout with another aluminum plate to put those on, because the speaker jacks can go through thick wood. It's going to be like half-inch thick hardwood, the base. But if people are really just don't think that putting the RCA jacks on the top, I might even be able to put them in the back behind the output transformers on the top plate, something like that. Anyway, let me know in the comments what you think about like where you would be okay with the input jacks being, and just trying to get some public input on some of this design stuff. But it's going to be the 6SN7s, a pair of those, driving a pair of 300B tubes. It's going to use the same circuit that a lot of you guys out there have built this amp. You know how good it sounds. I know how good it sounds. So we're not changing any of that. We're just going to upscale it with some iron and all that kind of stuff to make it worthy of being a 300B amp and worthy of some of these high-end 300B tubes. And to that point, I am planning on selling it with no tubes, because I feel like that I don't want to get into the tube business of having to warranty expensive tubes if they go bad. And there's other outlets for buying, like these EML tubes, or buying these Western Electric tubes and that kind of stuff if you want to go that market. And it's easy enough to get some JJ 300B tubes if you want to go that route. I probably am going to get a pair of JJ 300B tubes and try them in the amp. It's kind of a budget option that's easy to get. I know those Shugi Treasure 300B-Z tubes sound really good, but yeah, there's not just an open market to be able to purchase those. They're kind of hard to find, and they haven't been produced in years. Maybe they'll start making them too. The PS Vane Horizon 300B tubes sound really nice, so that might be an option. I did think that the Horizon 300B with the Horizon 6S and 7 were a little much for the way I have this amp tuned. So I might have to experiment with maybe some Electro Harmonics 6S and 7s and see how that pairs with those Horizon 300B tubes. I honestly wasn't real crazy about how the Electro Harmonics 300B tubes sounded. I tried a pair of them, and yeah, they just, I don't know, they aren't all that. But I've heard the JJs are pretty good. Anyway, getting way off topic. So I want to sell the amp with basically no tubes. I'll have recommendations on the tubes you can buy. Going to build them either with or without a volume control, whichever way, the person buying it would rather have it made. And going to use a audio note 100K potentiometer like I use on all my other builds. I think it's a really nice potentiometer. I'm not a big fan of step attenuators. I just don't like that whole step thing. And it seems like I'm always like wanting in between the steps. So somebody really wanted a step attenuator, I could probably put one in it, but I don't want to make it too customizable because that ends up being problematic. I may make the choice of wood up to the buyer, and these likely will be built to order. There will be some lead time. Not sure exactly what that'll be. I can't imagine it being more than about, 8 to 12 weeks, depending on the woodworker and how reliable they are. And I gotta find somebody that I can trust that can deliver these on order. Probably gonna get some oak ones made just to stock, and then have like optional, maple and walnut or whatever. And why don't you leave in the comments too, which one do you think should be the default, like walnut or oak? I'm kind of on the fence about that. I mean, walnut's kind of historically kind of a go-to wood, but oak also is a really nice looking wood to me as well. And previously I've done oak for my wood chassis, but walnut looks really nice too. And I don't want to get into like, these super exotic kind of wood, zebra, whatever, that, I don't want to get into that deal. So anyway, as far as price point, the iron's not going to be cheap. There's probably going to be $1,500 to $2,000 worth of iron, just the iron, as part of this build. And then when I add in the really nice caps and the audio note stuff and the Mundorf coupling caps and all the stuff that I do in these things, really it's going to need to be probably in the 5 to 6K price point, which I really think is reasonable for an amp that has this kind of quality parts in it, and it's got a rich feature set. It's very user friendly. It's going to be reliable. This is one of those things that you can hand down to your grandkids. I mean, it's going to last 100 years, and it's going to have value in 100 years. And so I don't think that's a ridiculous price point. And I got to price them where it's worth me even jumping into this venture. And going to have to stock parts and plus my time just building them. So anyway, let me know what you think about that. And again, I know some of you guys are wanting a custom hand-built $1,500 300B amp that is going to sound as good as anything on the market. And that's just not going to happen. And it doesn't happen even when it's made in China. They're scrimping on the iron and all that stuff. And I feel like that if I'm going to hand build these things, point to point wire, no circuit boards and all that stuff, I want to do it right and still be able to hit a price point that people can afford. And honestly, I don't think you're going to find anybody building a 300B amp using ISO Tango iron that's under 10 grand. I mean, if somebody can find one that somebody's doing that, put that in the comments too. Here's somebody building one with full made Japan high-end iron for a budget price. I don't think it's out there. And really, if you're going to do a 300B, you need to do it right, or you're just posing, in my honest opinion. And that's what a lot of these really low price point, like the Rysong A50 300B amp, it's just a poser amp. It doesn't even make 2 watts, and it's got all these issues that needs to be rewired and all that stuff. And even then, it's got cheap iron, and it just sounds okay. So anyway, that's going to update what I'm thinking about for 2025. Also going to be probably putting my phono stages as a direct buy off the website. I've got dozens of people so far have bought those things, and everybody that I've sold one to is happy with it. I mean, I give people a 30-day, 100% return policy. You pay the shipping back, you obviously pay the shipping to you, and then if you don't like it, just box it up, go to the UPS store, pay the shipping to get it back to me, and then I give you 100% of your money back. And so far, one person's returned their phono stage, and it was only because it had noise that they couldn't resolve, and they lived next to a cell phone tower and a high tension power lead with, 100,000 volts going over their house. And they said they've had other equipment that does the same thing, and they've had to return. So that's not a fault of the product. That's like somebody living in a house that I wouldn't live in with that much EMI in it. So anyway, that's going to be something, I'm not going to say I'm going to push, but I'm going to direct market in, where you go to the website, you click buy, you're put in the order queue, and then, if I've got one in stock, I'll send it to you, and if not, it might take 6 to 8 weeks to build another batch of them, and I'm going to try to keep that rolling, because it's such a good sounding product. I did have to raise the price from last year. You guys that bought the previous ones got lucky, got them for $850. They're gone up $100. The parts have just skyrocketed, which everything has. And yeah, I've had to bump the price up to cover the parts increase. I'm not charging any more labor or trying to make any more profit. I can't make less profit. So cost went up a little bit. Anyway, that's kind of it. I am having fun with this ST70. I was super impressed with how well that vintage restored one ended up sounding and testing. I mean, those output transformers, at least in those vintage ones, were off the chain good. I mean, I was blown away with their bandwidth and how nice they sounded and how low the distortion was, but still had nice second order harmonics. I do want to do a little more testing on how the bias point impacts the second order harmonic distortion. We're going to play with that. We'll see how this new kit compares to the old one. And so we got some fun stuff going. I know I've got these other projects that we've been kind of put on the back burner, and we're going to get to them in 2025. So that's going to happen too. So finally, I want to thank all you Patreon supporters and all you folks that make donations to my website. I really appreciate that. Really helps keep this channel going and keeps things happening here for you to enjoy watching. I appreciate all you subscribers. We went past 17K. I want to get past 20K this year, which I don't think is going to be a problem. 25K would be awesome. If I could double the subscribers, that would be even better. I mean, I don't know if I'm ever going to make the 100K point to get a plaque, but yeah, we can always dream. Also want to thank you folks like Thermionic Labs that have supported the channel and Skokie Designs by helping me work through projects and doing special iron for me and that sort of thing. I want to thank George Lentz at Tubes USA for working with me with developing my 300B amp and coming up with these custom transformers and all that kind of stuff. That's going to be really cool, and he's been super helpful. I want to thank my friend Mark, who I talk to pretty regularly. He's really given me some great insight. Thanks for that. Thanks to Ted, who, we got this ST70 because he sent it to me on commission. And there's just so many people out there that have supported me. Andrew at Sparkos and other folks that are just great. And please help support them too, because those are the good guys in this hobby. So anyway, I think it's a good place to wrap this up. And until next week, we will see you for the next Monday Monologue.